Repower Energy Development Corporation is looking to raise some 1.2 billion pesos in an IPO next month, with some 230 million shares on the table at up to 5 pesos each. The final pricing is expected to come out this May 30th, of offer period between June 5 and 14, and listing is set for June 23. Let's now speak to REDC's President Eric Roxas about the company's green ambitions and hydropower's role in a 100% renewable future. Eric, hi, thank you so much for joining us. Eric, all right.
Thank you for me on your show, yes.
All right, so Eric, it's all set for the IPO. I mean, come what may, regardless of interest rates, inflation, and an economic slowdown, this is going to happen?
This is 100% go. We're very happy to have secured all our regulatory approvals, and it is a 100% go. Whether dollar goes up, it's a go.
Okay, that's good to know. We've all been craving for more IPO names this year. So I understand that post the IPO, you will have a 3.25 billion peso market cap. How much bigger are you expecting to be with added firepower? Because you currently have, 124 megawatts of mini hydropower projects clustered in Laguna, Quezon, Camsor, Bukidnon, and other provinces. So what's the growth target? What are the goalposts?
We're thinking of growing by another 1,000 megawatts in the next 5 years, mainly concentrated on hydropower projects. We can go upstream, downstream. We can go into pump storage, seawater pump storage. So we're looking at a 1,000 megawatt portfolio within the next 5-6 years.
That's a pretty ambitious. But here, Eric, for those of us watching, many of us are not very technical about hydropower projects and how they work. And for those who have checked out your website, on the front page, there's actually a mechanical view of how hydropower projects actually work. So maybe I can give you 60 seconds or so to walk us through the process so investors actually know exactly what it is they're buying into. So I think we have a picture of the graphics there. So how does this work?
I think this is an old...
An old one, okay. Maybe we turn to the next graphics. Is this accurate, more accurate, how it works?
This is a more accurate picture.
All right, so how does it work?
It's technically very simple. We divert the natural flow of river from a higher elevation where we put the weir, which is on the right side corner here. It's a weir. You divert it through headrays and canals, and it goes down a penstock by gravity, where powerhouse at a lower elevation, where you have the turbines, which turn and turns the generators to generate electricity. The water is 100% returned back to the river. If you see here from the top, these are the green one is the overflow of the river. So after it passes the turbines, it goes back into the river.
Pretty.
What's that?
So it's very renewable, because the water that's used to, yeah.
It is very renewable, meaning the source is infinite.
And Eric, here I imagine we see the critical importance of dam infrastructures. Do we have enough of those?
We have to build them. That's the difficult part in building the infrastructure. Most of the project cost goes into the civil works in the infrastructure. And that is the difficult part.
Okay. Hydro. Let's talk about hydro as the big picture. I remember watching a documentary about a year back. It was by CNBC, and they described hydropower as the forgotten clean energy source. Because unlike solar and wind, which saw a massive plummet in price and skyrocketing availability, we haven't really heard much for hydro. Why do you think so, Eric? And what do you see that makes you so gung-ho about hydro?
Okay. First, hydropower projects are very capital intensive. So there's a lot of nature involved, where you have to pass through the mountains, build the headrays, canals. It's not for the faint of heart. So, but once you build it, the continuous flow of the rivers will keep it continuously running for the next 25, 50 years. It's the continuation and the consistency of the hydropower that makes it very interesting.
All right. Okay. So here's the thing. I also saw data that that describes hydro as producing twice as much as wind and over 4 times as much power as solar. And pumping water up a hill, which is pumped storage, you mentioned this earlier, comprises well over 90% of the world's total storage capacity. So it's very powerful.
Yes. Okay. By industry standards, solar's plant efficiency is something like 12.7%. Wind has something like 33%. Our plant factors, which we have been operating for the past 7 years, is something like 72%.
Wow.
So we have very high plant factor. We have very good hydrology. So we're very happy with the project.
All right. So the company is looking to raise a substantial amount of money. How are you going to use or deploy the fresh funds?
Presently, we have 6 operating power plants. We have which are about to come online within the next 2 months. We started building 2 more in March. It's a 15 megawatt power plant in Bukidnon and a 4.5 megawatt power plant in Quezon. So the bulk of the proceeds will be going to the partial equity portion of these 2 projects. We will have around 150 million, which we will use for development and acquisitions of new projects, and around 100 million, which will be used for working and operating capital.
When you say acquisitions, are you in any serious advanced stage of talks to buy existing hydropower plants?
We are actually looking at some. There are some low-hanging projects that we are trying to develop and still under negotiations. So we're looking at 2 or 3 plants that we are looking at positions.
All right. And when it comes to building from scratch, these greenfield investments, which areas are you looking at? I mean, I mentioned earlier you're doing clustered hydro projects. You're in Laguna, and you talked about Bukidnon. Are you seeing other areas that are good candidates for locations for your plants?
Right now, we're concentrated on the Quezon area.
Why Quezon?
There's a cluster of rivers there. So clustering means we have multiple power plants within a certain proximity of the area, where we can share the costs of building transmission lines. The switchyard, which houses transformers and electrical utilities. So it is shared costs that we can amortize among the different plants. We still have one which the proceeds will be used for in Priapi, and we might have another 2 or 3 more there in the Quezon area.
All right. You're going to be very, very busy. But Eric, actually, I think you're the first or second person I talked to that's really focused on hydro. If you could give us the general lay of the land, how is hydropower in the Philippines, big picture? How are we doing in that segment?
I think we are growing. There's not many, like I said, because of the capital intensiveness to build the hydropower, and many of them are very, very old. We actually have 3 of the oldest power plants in the Philippines, almost 100 years old,
and they're still working.
And we purchased them, we rehabilitated them, and we have more than doubled their capacity and more than double their plant factors. So they are still working. The oldest in Baguio in 1913, I think, something like that.
Wow. Eric, I'm very curious, what government support will companies like you need to make this work, and not just work, but to make it a big success story? And when you look outside of the Philippines, which country would you say could be used as a blueprint? Is it China? Because I know China has been building massive hydroelectric dams for decades.
Yeah, right now we already have a lot of government support. Again, the capital intensiveness.
Yes.
If government can support us with more financial capabilities to achieve financial close for the projects, that would help a lot. China has a lot of projects, but their cost is cheap, but their price is also cheap. Government incentive for us is they have a FIT program. We are guaranteed a fixed rate for the next 25 years, so that keeps the banks happy.
All right. I'm very curious. When hydropower plants generate power and supply, will that mean lower costs for consumers like myself? Are you cheaper than solar? Are you cheaper than wind? Cheaper than fossil fuel power?
We are cheaper than solar. We are cheaper than wind.
How much?
Yes. For example, now the wholesale market is doing like 8 pesos, 9 pesos because of the high oil prices. We are stable at around 5.87.
Okay. And what about solar? How does solar compare to your 5.87?
Solar, I think something like 8 pesos. We have 3 solar plants also under our other affiliates. We have solar plants. It's something like 8-9 pesos per kilowatt hour.
All right. And Eric, I'm very curious. You're counting on our river systems to have the water flow and turn the turbines and generate the power. This assumes you're not worried about climate change and rivers eventually drying out. I mean, look at the Hoover Dam in the U.S. We've lost 40% of generating capacity because of droughts.
Right now, what we see with our hydrology is very good. Of course, it may be seasonal. There may be the El Nino effect and the La Nina effect, rainy season and dry season. But right now, during the dry season, we are doing at around 50% plant capacity, and sometimes during the rainy season, we hit 110%. So on an annual average, we do around 70 to 75, 80% plant control.
And final question, Eric, big picture, when the Philippines moves to 100% renewable future, how much of that do you think can come from hydro? Ideally and realistically.
I think maybe 30-40% should come from hydropower.
All right, we're just going to have to see. It's a few years down the road, but you're building the building blocks for that story. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us. Oh, by the way, we have a phone-in question. The company managed to triple revenues last year, 382 million versus 2022. You grew your net income 8 to 9 times to 168 million, 2022 versus 2020. Are you expecting this kind of momentum to stay or to start normalizing?
No, we are. For this year, I think we're expecting something like 300 million. We will be increasing our capacity by 60%. And in 2 years' time, once the 2 other projects come online, we will be doubling that, maybe 500-600 million. That's not considering any possible mergers and acquisitions.
But there are potential M&As.
There are big potentials.
All right. On that note, Eric, exciting times ahead. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on IPO Day.
Thank you very much, Mimi.
All right. Now here.